It starts with Israel attacking Iran. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed. The idea is that as the world looks upon this with horror, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. And because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries.
Think quite carefully about the description. Think quite carefully about the description. Think quite carefully about the description.
Say no.
Male goes to war. The women will be left to some cultures.
Think quite carefully about the description.
They simply say no. And that's what we all should do, because this will end if we simply say no. say no. And that's what we all should do. Because this will end if we simply say no. And that's what we're here to do today. They simply say no. And that's what we all should do. Because this will end if we simply say no. No.
If the white male goes to war, the women will be left to the subcultures.
And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries. And then, he said, then the real war starts.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, on this, the second week of the big kickoff by Israel against Israel, also known as Iran. So, I go, I hope I'm not going to get this all night. Oh my God. Okay, just give us a second. Stop. Right. Stop with the texts, because I'm streaming. For goodness sake. What a day. I haven't had time to myself all day. Wow. Right. So, the second week we are in, and there are some strange anomalies now being seen specific to where these drones and rockets have actually been coming from. And this is very, very important. Very important indeed that we keep an eye on this, because, you know, and people forget that what we call Iran is actually not Iran. It's a nation under occupation by another branch of the same forces that control Israel, US, Blighty, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, et al., China, the whole show. And it's just a play. It's a game at the top, but below that, everybody's on a side, everybody's at this, and everybody's not at that. And so the game is real. But it really isn't. It's not a real game until they get you to act in it. Then it becomes real. And that is exactly what they're trying to do with everything they have within the power right now. Of course, we're expecting some kind of false flag to up the game somewhat, because of course the main plan in the West is to gain conscription, and not just the white race, by Evans. You look at these adverts on the television now, and it's a black guy, and of course the soldiers in the advert are on Blighty in lovely green pleasant lands, or you know, whether that be Wales or Salisbury. What they don't tell you in those adverts, of course, is that once you join, we're going to send you off into hell, some kind of desert full of numpties, and away we go again. So what looks like fantastic on the green and pleasant land, of course, isn't where you're going to be doing the fighting, because this has got nothing to do with the national interests of your nation. The national interests of the empire, still called British, but never has been, which is global, and a very yoke that has everybody's governments and states, and therefore militaries, etc., under its wing and its command. So not good. But people really don't see this game. You know, Iran is not Iran. And whatever this regime that's been occupying Iran since 1979, installed by the same forces that control Israel, is the occupation force, acting contrary to what we'd all class as sensible, and it has the Islamic title to it. Okay? It's all the same. All of it is the same. It's occupation versus occupation. And hapless nations in the West are so obsessed with this paradigm, they fail to recognise that actually your national interests have absolutely no play in this whatsoever. None. Absolutely zero. So there's no way is this about national interest. This is about the corporations tied to the empire. In this case here, it's the UK corporation. It's that interest. It's not a national interest. And people really need to get a grip of that. And tonight we're going to look at basically how the natural person plays out with this coming call for conscription. Because I've been looking on the news outlets, and you've got the local rags like, well, not local rags, but national rags like the Star and the Sun, you know, real shit old papers, presenting it in a way, oh, the only way you can get out of conscription, the only this, the only trades, etc. And of course I've been pointing, oh, you're missing something, lads. It's that you just decide yourself, no thank you. And of course they play that game because they don't have anybody on natural person. Everybody's on legal person. Now, you know that I've been playing with AI. You know that I got excited at it a couple of months ago because it shifted from being open to everything that was out there and available, being fixed into statutes completely. Now, the fraud, error and recovery is no longer a bill. It is now an act in force. It's had royal assent, the lot. I received a load of paperwork for new terms and conditions for Nationwide Building Society in the week, which was pretty clear to me. Everything's been set to synchronise with this Fraud, Error and Recovery Act that they've now installed. The courts, as we're seeing it now, are not playing out at all in relation to the methodologies that I've employed in the past, where they have actually worked. Now, back to what I was saying. So I weren't happy with AI whatsoever because it weren't playing the game. But I had a bit of an epiphany in that I thought, oh, okay. So AI is fixed now within statutes, nothing else. Okay, and I thought, okay, let's approach this in a different way. I will now try and present terms within its paradigm. And in that sense, I may learn something that perhaps I was missing relative to what we all understand in relation to the three jurisdictions. You've got your sovereign, your estate, and then you've got the legal statutory realm. Now, it's worked because in doing so, it's helped me to see the system from within itself. So how judges see it, what judges are looking for, but more importantly, and this is where it's been quite an intense study, it's that, as we know, it's all about the language and the words that you use. However, we've been coming from the standpoint, I'm man, I'm sovereign, etc., etc. And this closed system can't see that. It can't see that at all. So in sync with studying quite a few different ideas, not from any of the populist purveyors of this stuff, I have to say, because I actually don't listen to any of them in truth, because, you know, they're fixed in their own way, and that's pretty much it. So I don't particularly pay attention to what is out there and people moving in this direction. I tend to just follow what it is I need to follow as things come in, if you know what I'm saying. So that said, and now working within the paradigm of AI, which is fixed in the statute system, it's become rather interesting, to say the least. And in the current sort of agendas I've got going on in relation to the council tax, moving to that method has made things so much clearer and so much more in tune with actually what the system wants and what it is that it's doing. So I want to revisit what we did in the last two live streams. We did the common law and we did the legal fiction. Now I've added quite a lot to the legal fiction, which will make it make sense. Now we might not need to go through all the common law stuff again, but I've just put it together in one document and we'll go through it as we see fit. But the legal person side of things, this is where the crutch of the shift that I have made matters, and it matters enormously. More so in the sense that things that have worked in the past are no longer working today. So they're really moving in a different attitude to everything. The tyranny's moving in. The dictators and all its agents are now happy to up the game because, of course, they're soulless enemies. There's nothing to them. They do what they're told. They can't do anything other than do what they're told. And, of course, if they're told to go and kill, to go and rob, thieve, well, they're empty. And wait a minute. I've been told I can, and so they will. That's the measure of these shells, these empty shells, that people, our entire civil system, be that domestic security, be that judiciary, be that the chambers of lawyers, politicians, councillors, etc. Everybody in place today operating this system is an empty shell, regardless of how well they speak, how big the car is, how ugly the wife is, because that seems to work hand in hand with the higher they go, the more ugly the wife is, because in most cases, old wife there has got a cock. And he's pretending to be a woman. So, I mean, of course, that's being facetious, but you get my drift. These people are empty shells, and the only thing that moves them is, you can do this, I give you permission. And they don't give it another thought. So that's what we're up against today. Clearly, the old legal statute system has shifted a gear completely. It's shifted into a new gear. They're all under new orders. But in following this shift that I've been playing with for the last month, say, maybe more, then I would suggest this could be the most important data that I've ever presented so far, because this is the only shift that everybody would have to do, regardless of what you're doing, if you're dealing with the system. Anything else will not work. You really have to make a major shift in how you approach the word person. Okay? And again, I'm saying this because I, for years, have presented it in a different manner. Okay? But we need to look at it because it's important. Very, very important. And I'm going to give you an insight as to another agitator that made me realise I were on the right track. And I did present it on the FaceAche. I don't know whether I've put it on here yet, but that's not it. That's not it. That's it. So it's the Castle Doctrine, okay? And it says the Castle Doctrine is an ancient common law doctrine stating that a private natural persons have no duty to retreat in their home or castle or abode, and may use reasonable force, including deadly force, to defend their property, person, or another. Outside of the abode, however, a person has still no duty to retreat. If possible, give fair and just warnings before using deadly force. Okay? Now, of course, this is what the no longer constabularies are operating to. This is the statutory, you might say, shift that they've given themselves in order they can use deadly force. Okay? The evolved version, now known as Stand Your Ground laws, same as above, of ancient laws of England and its people, that no man is above another. No man is above the law. All are equal in the eyes of the law. All have equal value and in substance. These are all our ancient laws, customs, traditions, beliefs, and way of life for thousands of years upon our own native land of Britain, that many have forgotten, to who they truly are, and all their birthrights, or born liberties, you might say, and freedoms, privacy, and the right to live free without any interference from others. This is the law of the land of England, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, and all Commonwealth countries worldwide. Now, I think we have mentioned it before, now thinking about it, but I want you to consider private natural persons, okay? Because we know that in common law, we're talking English common law, the term in general use is people. And a people, of course, is a group of people that operate as a nation and therefore a race, okay? But just take that on board. Private, natural person. Okay, now, we know we've got three jurisdictions. We have the sovereign, which is between the trust between a self as a man and the creator, or the father of the beginnings. That doesn't stand in any of this statutory system. Then we have the estate, okay? The estate that the Crown has formed and held in trust on our behalf. Now, there you are a private natural person, okay? So the shift would be in understanding that the word person doesn't just relate to the statutory or legal title or person. There are two classes of person. Natural persons, which represents the equity of the estate, and then legal person, which is the one that holds the liabilities, or indeed, it is the gateway into accessing the estate. Now, as it stands today, we don't understand the situation, and they're the ones that use that through our coming forward and our signatures to access the estate of the private natural person, okay? So this is the sort of shift that I have come to understand is recognised in this system. Now, by all methods that we've presented paperwork in the past, the way we've cited our standing, etc., still has a foundation. But because we're using the term, or let's say we're avoiding the use of the word person, again, is why it's not a recognised shifting of standing, giving off your true status. Because the term man doesn't play in their game, okay? And we also understand that the term beneficiary in the statutory system also becomes the taxable entity, unless it's in the private realm, which this is when you get into the natural person. So this is what I've started to work with. And now, instead of having opposition from AI, in using these new terms, not being afraid to use the term person in its natural form, the AI is working absolutely superb. I cannot believe the shift. And like I said, my first response to AI was to decry it, call it names and all sorts, and have a fit. But in my shifting, rather than just carrying on being cross at it, wow, what a difference a day makes, if you get my drift, yeah? So that's the basic crutch of today. So we're going to go back on the data that we've looked at in the last 2 weeks, common law and legal fiction, but mainly the legal fiction. Especially given that now our youth, and even up to 65, if you've been in the forces in the past and you're still on the reservist, everybody's up for potential grabbing, okay, or putting in a position where all they're going to know is fear because they've no data to reckon with to understand the situation. Now, this is another thing that I've contemplated as well in these few weeks, and that is, if you look at what fear is, and I have gone through this in the past before, but I think this might be a more succinct sort of explanation of what's actually taking place, because fear is it's a natural response to certain stimuli. So if we take, for example, let's say a soldier, okay? So a soldier is basically being trained to push his body in extreme circumstances. So that's extreme physical, extreme mental, and then you're being trained to responses. So in essence, you're being extended to a capacity you've not actually reached before, but then you're being given a methodology and a means to how you should react to that. And as it expands, it gets bigger, greater, more data, more things to respond with, and then you practice them. You practice them and you practice them and you practice them. And so when you look at special forces, what's happening with these guys is they're put to the extremes of stimuli that can take place. And as those extremes are expanded, you're given reactions, you're given methods, you're given ways to think, to consider it. So that what you're actually doing there is you're training your subconscious to a stimuli. You've got something in the data banks to do in that situation. Okay? And the more extreme it goes in the training, the more extreme the stimuli can be. You're not going to freeze. That fear is going to hit you as an energy to make you decide to fight or flight. So, of course, the more you program your subconscious and fill it with data, ideas, and methods to play in that extreme frequency, then, of course, there is no fear. Fear is just a stimuli, you move. Okay? So, this is the same situation when you're faced with law. Okay, so a letter comes through, you pop yourself because you're like, what the fuck? Oh my God, how dare I be attacked? And you're being attacked. Now, the less data you have in relation to what you do to that stimuli, then there's a void. There's a great void between the stimuli, the fear reaction, fight or flight, because of course, there's no fight there if you don't have the data, if you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge to how you react to this thing. And so the void at that point then is filled by fear. And so it's flight. There's no fight. It's flight. But what I'm saying is, as these stimuli come to you, fear hits you, opens up a sort of path, fight or flight, but because you've no knowledge, it just gets filled with fear until you become that rabbit in the headlights. And once you're in that fear, then they start piling it on you, you just concede. And so that's the best way to reckon with this. Why is it that when these things come, I just freeze? It's because you've nothing in that void to keep you motion, keep you going and moving. And then out there in La Land, all since the Freeman movement, we've had this massive programming of what they say you should do. So for the brave, of course, we've got stuck in and we've filled our void. We haven't allowed the void to be filled by fear. We didn't do the flight, we did the fight. And therefore, we've filled our void up with all this data. But the data isn't succeeding, is it? In sense, it takes us to a point, but these guys up here are laughing still. And they might play with you for a while because they know they're going to get what they're all about, which is the coin at the end of it. Doesn't matter how long it takes. The more long it takes, more people are involved, the more coin they're going to achieve. So it's been a game. And all this data that we've been fed, as it limits, and left us in a position where we think, we know it, we're right. And we just keep banging. We hit that limit and we keep banging and banging and banging and banging. And it doesn't go. It doesn't work. Some do. You can get that bit further and it does work. But, and this is the kicker, as I've helped people, it is really based on their capacity as much as it is mine in paperwork. You can beat them on paper, but then you've got to stand there and show and tell, which is the problem. And this is the problem when you're trying to help people by teaching them. They're still in that fear mode, and they're not apt to study and put the effort and study it deep so that they understand what it is that you're doing for them. And again, it is a symptom of the fact that the thing that's entered that void is fear, because of the lack of applied methodology to fight it. And so flights going on, the void is full of fear. It's a terrible situation to be in. And that's in all different walks of life in relation to how well you can move with these things that come at you. So basically, it's the ignorance of things in all walks of life. 2020, the prime example. It came cold. 99% of the population had no concept, A, that the profession in and of itself wasn't what they believed it to be, because they were completely dependent on it. B, they hadn't recognised that actually they were in an employment contract, and therefore had all the ammunition they needed if the employer was trying to kick them off it. So it's ignorance. So when we say people are ignorant, or they're so dependent on this system that they've become ignorant, we're not necessarily saying that I do say I'm facetious and shit just to try and trip you out of it, but you have actually allowed yourself to become so empty of any methods and structures in order to actually control your own life. Does this make sense? So back to the law side of things, because this war, they're not going to stop now. This is the kick-off that they said they've been planning since. Well, the beginning of that tune is 2025. That discussion was had in London that the gentleman is discussing. I think he learned of it in 2010. But 2005 was when that was being discussed in London, to which the guy involved relayed it to the guy who speaks it. So 2005, ladies and gentlemen, that's 20 years ago. 21 years ago. This is the kicker. Unless it dies down of its own, because there's not enough government support for it across the world, this is the moment that they've had planned for a very long time, because it goes beyond that. It goes back to the end of the Civil War in the US on the Third World War strategy. But specifics how they were going to do it, this is now that mechanic being played out. And people have to really realise that. It's important. Now, of course, there's so many things going to come down on this pipeline conscription, you're going to have oil gone through the roof, it's going to become scarce, which means food's going to become scarce because it's all imported from fucking all over the world. Everything now you're going to start to realise why buying from the supermarket has annihilated your own national interest to survive on food production. Yeah, convenience has killed everything. Your convenience has demolished self-sufficiency. And people are now, like they were in 2020, no idea of how the game works. Your next raft of understanding is going to be to grasp that you, by your actions, by the farmers' actions in setting up and contracting with DEFRA, contracting with the EU for free money subsidies to not farm, is the cause. The governments and the secret societies that control them only put it forward as an offer. It's on us for taking it up because it was convenient. And this has been going on for a long time, since the Second World War, you might say, when they set up a system to wipe your bottom. So it is, seriously, and I say this a lot, ignorance is the mechanic that's making this system work. And therefore, when I say to be a human is to be a shade of man. Man would be looking after his own interests and the interests of his neighbours. And together as a tribe, the interest of the nation. No longer the case. No man like that exists. Very few of us exist like that today. And them that do are misusing that because they're using it to their advantage, to your disadvantage. To the point we can see now, it's that extreme. They're not bothered too much about actually killing people en masse. Okay, the empty shells. Now, this is where we're going. So we need to fill that void in order what comes next doesn't get an easy road. It doesn't get an easy road. And we also have to consider that martial law basically means no law. Everything's military. All right? And then they're under the laws of war. Now, that's important. But again, we've gone through occupation. It's got rules. Because it's all based in statutes. It's all based in corporate statutes. Because war is corporate. It's a racket. It's about money. It's about gaining land, power in other nations over other peoples. That's what it is. And as I've said before, Islam, for all its wind and piss about it being it's a fucking occupying force. It's what it is. It's what its intentions are. It's in all of its doctrine. Yeah? Again, ignorance of your own culture and the real meaning to the gospel about giving you autonomy. The whole gospel is not about the man. It's about a teaching that shows you that if you focus to what's internal to you as a man, you will be a man. It will transform you from a slave, an ignorant slave, into the man that knows. Okay, and that's why they need to get rid of it. This entire system that's being placed in is a slave system. So this is why it's very important that we start to fill the void that's in there already in relation to what's coming down the line. Okay, specifically conscription, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't understand this, your fleabags are never going to understand it. And like happens every time, First World War, as a prime example, off they go and get slaughtered. Because the commanders in all these wars, in all your regiments, are assholes. They've always been assholes. They keep being assholes because they're all recruited from the aristocratic class in the main of the bastard lines of Charles II. Scottish Solomons. Right? It's so fucking important that the void is filled so you're not running on ignorance. So that's what we're going to look at again tonight. And I think it's important that you take this on board. Questions, I want questions. As we go through it, I will keep my eye on what you're saying, because if there's pertinent questions, I will do my best to answer them. All right? And it's the only game on the table, ladies and gentlemen. Now, no matter what you think I would suggest you consider this shift as I have seen operate and work. It's just out of this world how it works. Okay? So there's your castle doctrine. You've got this conscription thing. So draft Baron Trump website launches amid calls for him to join the US military. They've responded by saying he has a medical exemption. Now, an increasing number of people believe Israel is responsible for most attacks against Gulf countries. Residents of Dubai have noted that drones and missiles originate from the direction of Israel rather than Iran. Additionally, Israeli nationals were detained in Saudi Arabia and Qatar while attempting to execute a bomb plot. And there is one suggestion of a course of a particular drone that hit the UK Cyprus base, which has got the Starmer shitting himself and about turning, because Trump, of course, is giving it large. I mean, there's more things going on. Trump said some ridiculous things this week on his Twitter. This man, the so-called custodian of the two holy mosques, purposefully allowed his fellow UEA Manuf Queen to take a section of the Kiswa from the Kaaba and give it to Jeffrey Epstein so that Epstein can use it, the cloth for the Kaaba, as a rug. This was not just a thoughtless gift, this was an intentional gesture. MBS and the UEA were providing Epstein with parts of the Kaaba. What does that tell you about what these Saudi princes think? Now, India's been over in Israel and has said Israel is the fatherland and India is the motherland. So how do they work that out, I have to say? Well, it can only be relative to the gods that they operate with. Now, this guy's back, and he's been cited as being in sync with Xi, Putin and Trump. I've told you before, this guy is no fucking hero. This guy's a shill of the utmost. And if you want an idea, just take a look at these reports I have on site. The first being, let me just have a look. Juliet Dreyfus and Julian Assange, script writing for controlled opposition. He's right up there with the elites. The saga of Julian Assange and the rise of the green machine. And Julian Assange orphans the family and controlled opposition. What you need to know. Now, the family is a cult in Australia, for which his mother, one of her boyfriends, was a member of, and obviously they made a big play with Julian back then. And considering in these terms, if you're struggling, that Julian Assange didn't spend a day in jail. He didn't spend a day in jail. If you can grasp that, then you're starting to understand a thing or two. Okay. Now, I thought we'd just have a little look through a quick brief reminder of the Iran-Iraq war, because in so doing, we can actually get a bit of an insight into who controls this. So the Iran-Iraq War, 1988, the 8-year war that shook the Middle East. Okay. So, I mean, the neighbours, they're together, which is why a big chunk of Iran and a big chunk of Iraq are actually Babylon. Now, there's another thing as well that I think is important to just present, and that is, if we go back in academic history, we are told that Sumeria is the cradle of civilization. Now, when you get into the Noah blag and the Anunnaki and all this malarkey, the truth of the matter is, Sumer was the place at which the bloodlines brought forward by Noah had the root and started to build the base in opposition to civilization that had survived the cataclysm of Atlantis. So Sumer is the soul of the fallen, and always has been, which is why academia always focuses to Sumeria as the cradle and the beginning of civilization after the flood. Yes, but that's what Noah pulled through the puke, all right? which is why it's a no-hide system today. So again, I've not really presented that in past, but I thought it was important to get that. Now, September 1980, the Middle East erupted into one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts of the late 20th century. The war began when Saddam Hussein ordered Iraqi forces to invade Iran, believing the country was weakened after the Iranian Revolution. Now, of course, we all know Saddam Hussein were best mates with George Bush. George Bush Sr., and of course, back in those days, George Bush Sr. Was controlling Reagan. He was head of the CIA. Okay? So, being friends with George H. Bush meant you were operating for the CIA. Okay? Instead of a quick victory, Iraq had triggered a brutal 8-year war that would kill or wound more than 1 million people, devastate both economies, and permanently reshape the politics of the Middle East. Remembering also that after the Iranian Revolution wasn't a revolution by Iranian people, it was the installation of a French Ayatollah on Iran under an Islamic dictatorial regime. And this is what gets lost today when people are focusing to what's actually going on. The conflict became known as the Iran-Iraq War. Why the war started? The causes of the war were complex and deeply rooted in history. For decades, Iran and Iraq had argued over the Shat al-Arab waterway, the vital river channel where the Tigris and Euphrates meet the Persian Gulf. Whoever controlled it controlled a major oil export route. But the conflict was also fueled by deeper tensions. Rivalry between Arab Iraq and Persian Iran, so that's Sunni and Shia. Fear of revolutionary ideas spreading across the region, Saddam Hussein's ambitions to become the dominant leader of the Gulf, and border disputes dating back decades. After the Iranian Revolution replaced the Shah, who was a British imperial plant, with the Islamic government of Ruhollah Khomeini, Iraq's leadership believed Iran was unstable and vulnerable. Saddam decided it was the perfect moment to strike. So it was basically the Sunni attacking a new occupation force of Shia. The Iraqi invasion. On September 22nd, 1980, Iraqi aircraft bombed Iranian air bases while tanks and infantry crossed the border. Iraq expected Iran to collapse quickly. Instead, the invasion united the Iranian population. Iranian soldiers, Revolutionary Guards and volunteers flooded to the front lines. What Iraq expected to be a short campaign turned into a massive defensive war. Fighting quickly spread across the province of Khuzestan, where cities like Khorramshahr and Abadan became battlegrounds. The siege of Khorramshahr was especially brutal. After weeks of intense fighting, Iraqi forces captured the city, but at an enormous cost. 2 years later, Iran retook it in 1982, one of the most dramatic turning points of the war. So this is Reagan time, so George H. Bush is in charge. Okay. A war of attrition. After 1982, the war changed. Instead of ending the conflict after pushing Iraqi forces out, Iran decided to continue fighting inside Iraqi territory in hopes of overthrowing Saddam's regime. This decision transformed the war into a long stalemate. The front lines hardened and trenches, minefields and artillery duels that many observers compared to World War I. Major battles included Operation Ramadan 1982, Battle of the Marshes, Operation Karbala the 5, 1987. Now, look at that. Many observers compared it to World War I. So we can see that it was a made-up situation because arms were being used, so arms were being bought. You know what happens when military things going on? All the science is pushed into making better weapons, okay, acquiring better weapons. So that's what happened. It was set into a trenched situation, which, because of course it was managed by the United Nations. Remember, no declarations of war. United Nations goes in at the start of a war and manages it, okay? So it was put into them lines, just like World War One, because of course the Rothschilds were running World War One. All right, and who were they borrowing the money off? Not only for the weapons, for the wages, but also to rebuild these things. So it's a kick off, earn, and rebuild, earn. It's a win-win for the bankers. Massive offensives often resulted in tens of thousands of casualties for only small territorial gains. World War One. It's about killing people. That's all it's about. Young volunteers, sometimes barely teenagers, were sent across minefields in human wave assaults. Can you see? This is what it's just about, killing. These wars, once you get them in the position of World War One, trench against trench, is a cull. That's all it is, a cull. This is exactly what they're trying to get with the white races and the blacks in the West to go and fight for these Bolsheviks that control Iran and control Saudi Arabia and control Israel, and through their wiles, America, Blighty, Europe, et al. Now, entire landscapes were turned into wastelands of trenches, destroyed tanks and shattered villages, chemical weapons and the darkest chapter. One of the most horrifying aspects of the war was Iraq's use of chemical weapons. Mustard gas and nerve agents were deployed against Iranian troops and later against Kurdish civilians. The most infamous attack occurred in 1988 in the Kurdish town of Halabja, a chemical attack where thousands of civilians died and chemical agents were released. Images of victims, families frozen where they fell, shocked the world. Despite international condemnation, the war continued. The Tanker War. By the mid-1980s, the conflict spread into the Persian Gulf. Both Iran and Iraq began attacking oil tankers and commercial ships belonging to each other or their allies. The phase became known as the Tanker War. The attacks threatened global oil supplies and eventually drew outside powers into the region. Naval forces from several countries began escorting ships through the Gulf to prevent attacks. The Iran-Iraq War was no longer just a regional conflict. It had become an international crisis. Yeah, who's managing it? United Nations. The war finally ends. After years of devastation, exhaustion finally forced both sides to stop fighting. In 1987, the United Nations Security Council passed United Nations Security Council Resolution 598, demanding an immediate ceasefire. By 1988, Iran's economy was strained and its population war-weary. Iran accepted the resolution. The ceasefire officially took effect on August the 20th, 1988. 8 years of war, the borders were essentially unchanged. So nothing changed, just a lot of death, more militarization of both camps, but ultimately more debt. Okay? The cost of the war. The Iran-Iraq War was one of the most destructive conflicts since World War II. Estimates vary, but the war likely caused 500,000 to 1 million deaths, and that's a very low estimate. Millions wounded, entire cities destroyed, massive economic devastation. And of course, a lot of the old Sumerian architecture was destroyed, because the last thing they want is you to see that, as I've just said, Sumer was not the base of civilization. It was the base of the evil, if you go with religion. Both nations spent decades rebuilding. The war also left lasting psychological scars on both societies. In Iran, it became known as the Sacred Defense. In Iraq, it strengthened Saddam temporarily, but left the country heavily in debt, contributing to his later decision to invade Kuwait in 1990. Legacy of the 8-Year War. The Iran-Iraq War proved that modern wars can last without victory. Years. It showed how ideology, nationalism and ambition can trap nations in conflicts where neither side can win. No, but in the population cull and debt, it's a big win for the bankers. Now, another important thing, because 1988, you only had 2 more years before George H. Bush, as president, attacked Iraq. Now, we were told because Saddam had invaded Kuwait. Now, this is what they don't tell you. But in Kuwait, which was run by London, and a lot of the people in there were what you might call Methodist preacher kind of people, okay, all over Kuwait. Kuwait was putting pipelines under the border and siphoning off oil wells in Iraq. That's what they were doing. Saddam spoke with George H. Bush, suggested he might go in there to stop it, and George said, well, we won't stand in your way. Now, George H. Bush meant that, but what we didn't realise at the time was London then decided what the president went. And George said no. Thatcher asked him, said he weren't doing it. Then he got orders that he had to do it, and the next thing he were in there. So they built up Saddam and then destroyed it again, because it were a major military in that area. And of course, Israel couldn't accept that. So that's basically the story of the Iran-Iraq war, okay? And it's just not good, let's be honest. So there's your sources. So that's a little look at that. What have we got next? Right, we've got some interesting. Now, King Henry VII and John Cabot, interesting. On this day in history, March the 5th, 1496, an English king handed an Italian sailor a piece of paper that birthed North America. John Cabot secured royal backing to cross the Atlantic with just 18 men. He planted the English flag in Canada, securing a massive continent 32 years before Jamestown. 1496, 4 years after the mass exodus of Jews from Spain to the West Indies. And Columbus. Interesting that all this were happening under a Holy See family, Palavicini, that were also controlling Spain. And they got this newly formed imperial force that they were building on Blighty to take the north, while the others took the south. Is that clever? But of course, if you go with the academic history, they're two separate organisations. Absolutely not. And that's just a quick Venetian guy, by the way, he was, Cabot. That's just an interesting gig on a bit more data on what were going on after the Holy See families, the Venetians, had took over Blighty by installing the Tudors. Where are we now? Okay, the jurisdictions of law. Now, we don't necessarily have to go into the common law again because, as I said, we did it last week. It's more important that we focus to the fiction. Now, I'm going to come back in here and have a look at who's in, and then we'll get cracking on with this. But it's really important, chaps, that we start to focus to fill that void so it's not fear that's kicking everybody's ass when this shit starts to pile down. They've got all the acts in together. This fraud, error and recovery bill is going to tie people up to such a degree it's frightening. I mean, we've gone through this before when it was just a bill, and we could see the reasoning of it. What it's about is just to give these public bodies access to your bank account and fleece the living daylights out of you, basically. And we can see gold's gone right down. They're so manipulating the mineral side of things because of this conflict, which is what they always do. Right, so Upward says, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. Evening, Upward. John says, hello, all. Forgot it was Sunday. We'll miss this one. Jane says, evening, all. Evening, Jane. Carrie says, hi, love from Portsmouth. Evening, Sam. PY Music says, good evening. Evening, Paul. Paul Sefton says, good evening, Sean and fellow inmates. Where are we there? Evening, Paul. Jerry's son of Mick says, hey, Sean and all in the Wise Asylum. I've got this on the wrong gig. There we go. June says, good evening, Sean and Tat. Evening, June. Mr. Jim Drinsey says, evening each and all. Evening, Jim. Upward Dog says, seems like the biblical prophecy ancient play script is being activated. Yep. Evening, Upward. Maroon Fox. Evening, Sean. Evening, all. Evening, Maroon. Ulick says, hey, Sean and all. Evening, Ulick. Jerry says, hey, all. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Cheers says, okay. Kazakh says, hi, all. Evening, Kazakh. Jerry says, notice how it is switched back to man. All persons are equal under the law. Okay, well, hopefully I'll be able to explain this a little bit better tonight. Evening, Sean, and all the WA team, says Treen. Evening, Treen. Fight your flight, says Ulick. Yep. Imagine that, says, a legal fiction is an assumption adopted by courts or legislatures that something is true, even if it is known to be false, to allow the law to operate, provide equity, or solve a legal dilemma. Corporate personal, treating a corporation as a separate person that can be sued and hold property despite not being a human. Jerry says, because it's afforded all the rights of all persons of under law, legal. That's right. Imagine says, learned helplessness is a psychological state where individuals stop trying to improve negative situations, believing their actions are futile due to past uncontrollability. Yeah, I mean, when you get into these games, you can't give up. You have to keep going. But you have to be prepared to take the consequences, or you will never be able to push the branch. You'll never be the guy chopping down the foliage in the jungle. You know? You can't. You've got to have that. Jerry says you need to live it and know it well, of course. Imagine that says all by design through social engineering. The whole waitem we are living now was gamed out decades ago. Please don't spell check me. You know your minds will correct it when you read it. Waiting for the next false flag incoming. Yeah, absolutely. Human in its true sense is unable to inherit. Oh, it's a monster. A monster of the sea. I don't have any sound here in a noisy place, so don't know what is being said, says Kaz. You'll have to put earphones on. You're missing loads. Okay, we'll go look for some. Okay. Right. To business. The jurisdictions of law. Wait a minute. I better put it over there, hadn't I? There we go. The jurisdictions of law. Okay. Now, we've done the common law. Common law comes from the rights ordained by the Father, the original jurisdiction of the free people. They are unalienable and therefore unchangeable. It's not history or a relic. So we know the common law, but do we? Because the common law is people. Now, when it all shifted under government, commonwealths of governments, this is where the term person starts to come into play. And common law means no harm, keep your word. So if you're not in that phrase, you're not under common law. And the big chief's watching and all his angels, so you can't blag it. You know what I'm saying? You can blag persons, but you can't blag the game. You're either in that or you're not. And no matter how much you believe you are, that's not where the market is, okay? And that's not where you're being reckoned with. And it's the law that existed before governments, okay? It reminds us that government is a servant and not a master. Government rules come before reason, presumed jurisdiction replaces actual consent, and government holds power that people delegate, so that's how it's supposed to be. Its duties are simple, do no harm, and keep your word. So they're still based in the system, the common law system. Now, we're going to bypass the common law, but of course I'll put this new document up underneath, because I want to fix to this legal fiction. Now, we went through this first part of it last week, but we're going to go through it again. I have added a considerable amount of data. Okay. Now, the origin of the legal fiction was born from the idea that, from a historical view, legal systems run into a problem due to the complexity of life, that if it was a necessity to metaphysically prove every aspect of life, administration becomes impossible. Therefore, law created administrative or operational shortcuts. Legal fictions to simplify adjudication, to allow rules to be applied consistently, to make institutions predictable, to create categories that can be processed. Without fictions, modern administration collapses. They are found within Roman law and became especially developed in English common law. The point: when a system begins to govern primarily by classification, it becomes a system of effect, not because law disappears, but because law becomes procedural machinery. So procedure is very important in the way in which the court system operates. There's procedure, it has to be obeyed. These Johnny-come-latelys that we know, whether you're council tax or whatever, always try and wing it and play a funny game, and if you don't rebut it, it carries through. So nothing's operating on fact as per se. It's acting on what the fuck can we get away with, okay? And when you've got all members of the court, members of the law society, or in contract with it and subservient to it, they're making it up as they go along. And so, but you've still got judicial review and other methods by which you can have their game looked at. So when it begins to govern by classification, it becomes a system of effect. So it's not a system of law. And law actually becomes procedural machinery. So it's procedure that's the precedent in relation to how these games work. Legal fiction is not a lie. It's a legal device. A construct the court treats as if true for purposes of applying a rule. It does not claim to redefine reality, and it does not deny your natural existence. It operates inside a legal forum. For example, A corporation is treated as a person. A state can own property. Constructive notice assumes awareness whether or not you actually read something. So everything's about rebuttal. Constructive possession treats us as possessing something that is not on our body. An agency binds us through another's act. Imputation attributes knowledge or intent across roles. Okay, so, and this is what's made me, as I've gone into this shift, and obviously I've been seeking out the data to support it one way or another, this is sort of the new foundation upon which I'm basing how you deal with this system, okay? So it's not a lie per se, it's just not you, okay? When we all know this, we all acknowledge and accept that it's not us, and which is why we fire off on this, I'm a man, which is true. It is true. But for this construct that they've created, it doesn't work because it's not within that construct, okay? It's a structure, but it's not form, you might say. Now, let's have a look. These are not the same form of a spiritual or metaphysical claims. They are operational statements, okay? Inside, then used. They are classification tools that say, for the purpose of this proceeding, we shall treat X as if it were true. Not because it is true in nature, or true in God's law, or scientifically true. It is so because it is administratively functional inside a legal forum. So inside the legal form, this is the way it works. So to keep that correct, you've got to work within the form that they can administer. If you start stepping outside of it, they don't have it. It doesn't make sense in this form. So when you start looking at it like this, you're not so much arguing the wrongs and rights of it. What we need to start to recognize is that they've created this, and this is the way they work, whether we like it or not. The fact that it's took so long on Western nations is because we have constitutions, US and Blighty. People have forgotten about the Constitution. People are accepting the Constitution to be 1688 onwards. Well, it is, but it's the laws taken from common law and pulled into government reach through a state. So we say a state is made up of a natural person, and of course this gateway into that estate is the legal person. Okay, so the legal person doesn't deny the natural person. Get that in your mind to keep up with this, okay? It's not denying the existence of the natural person. We are. We do that because we're that off the person, we're going man. All right? So it's not us that are cancelling out the natural person. Sorry, it's not the state that's cancelling out the natural person. It's us. Or I shall say I, because this is how I've played for quite a long time, all right? Now, where are we there? Okay. Legal systems use fictions to simplify administration and to apply statutes consistently. The mistake people make is to think a legal fiction replaces who they are. It does not. It creates a defined status within a specific jurisdiction for procedural purposes. Understanding that distinction is the beginning of leverage. Okay? Now that takes some absorbing. Okay? I've been playing with this now for about a month, maybe a bit more. And because I've a use for this, you see, at the moment. We've got two things going on where I'm now applying this methodology. So obviously it's not been sent yet. But as I said, instead of AI having a fit, and me then having a fit, it's working. AI is acknowledging it and coming back with more data as to why it's incorrect what they've done. Okay, because I'm now including this natural person. It's quite phenomenal, actually, and profound, the way that things have shifted. Now, the core distinctions: there are two planes of reality operating at once. Okay, so when you go in a court, there are two planes of reality. Whereas we see these two planes as man v person, what I've come to understand, it's person versus person. Natural person as opposed to legal person. Right? The natural person has equitable rights in the estate. And this is the major breakthrough that I've had. Right? It's massive. And I say massive because of the way AI is operating. So to use this format that I'm giving you now, in AI yourself, you are going to be amazed. Amazed that you now have a personal barrister in your room. And so whereas before you're a naturalist, fuck AI, it's a load of bollocks. Me, because that's the kind of geezer I am, now playing a little bit different, and that energy isn't coming to bear. There is no argument at all with AI. I may ask it to expand on an explanation, and it does. Wow. Massive. Now, I've even tested it this week by removing all the history of a particular piece of AI structure that I've used and started it from brand new. So it didn't know, there's no name for me like it had. There's no concept of who I am. And I went full in with the piece that I had to that point, the older one had helped me create, and threw it in. Bang! Immediate! We're right on form. No nothing. No argy-bargy, nothing. It's just bang on. Because I'm now operating with the correct verbiage. Natural person is the equitable entity. The legal person, you might say, is the gateway into that equity. And at present, because the reversion hasn't been completed, that legal entity is the gateway into this equity. Okay? Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, this is so profound, it's unbelievable. And I can't believe it's took me this long, but then I can believe it's took me this fucking long because I believed we were right. Well, there we go. It's never too late to acknowledge that you're thick. Because I'm acknowledging I'm thick all the fucking time. And I have a little laugh at myself, I'm jollies, and away we go again. That's the way you deal with things. If you're going to hate yourself and think, oh my God, it's disgusting, I can't accept that I'm a dick. I can't do this. I have to stand on this premise from now on and hide it from the world. You're fucked. You are bollocks because you're never going to move forward. The rest of your life is doomed, like the great philosophers, to protecting what it is you've believed all this time because you can't face yourself. You can't reckon with yourself and say, you are the dumbest piece of shit that's ever existed, Sean. But I love you. Have a laugh. Crack on. And of course, I'm doing what most people don't do, live in front of you guys, so that you can see that I'm not joking. I were full of wind and piss, believed I were best thing and fantastic and amazing. I am fantastic and amazing, but just in that little section there, I were a complete knobnuts. And I'm happy to accept it, acknowledge it, and kiss it goodbye. Bless it, say bye-bye. I'm no longer going to be demented. And I'm happy for you to see that that is how I operate as well. I'm not going to sit there holding guilt on myself, going, oh, you are a complete lunatic. Everybody's going to hate you. Because I don't care if everybody wants to give a rat's ass what anybody else out there thinks, as long as I love myself and like myself. Even though, and this is the kicker, the more you do that on your cock-ups, the more you like yourself after. It's because there's nothing got power over me anymore like that. There's no mind traps anymore. Satan can't play on me and say, you are a bad one. Everybody's going to hate you and think you're a dick and as well. I don't give a fuck. And that's what you need to learn to do. Not give a fuck. Forgive yourself. Let go of yourself. Bless it. Fuck it off. Don't do it again. And then in 6 months' time, you can have a jolly laugh at yourself 6 months ago when you thought you were the dog's bollocks. And then realised, I were only one dog bollock. There was still another bollock to make right. And then you're complete. Although, there's probably even more to know. I think I'm fantastic. Well, I am fantastic and amazing. But just little bits up there that still probably need to washing off. Just making right. But I'm on the path and I will find it. So, off we go after that little rant. Now, the core distinctions, okay? There's two planes of reality operating at once. We always thought it was man, I am the fucking man, and this is I just a person. Change that to, right, natural person and legal form. So, A, the natural reality, you are real, you are flesh and blood, a creation of the Father with unalienable freedoms, you are alive, you are not paper. But the estate upon which this system depends is paper. Natural person. And B, the little trickster, the little bugger, is a legal form reality. In a court or administrative venue, the system must decide what category applies, what rules applies, who bears the burden, and what remedy follows. Okay? Very important. Now, I think this is where we're starting to add on once I get this last bit up. So, legal fictions live on plane B. And if you confuse A with B, you get trapped in outrage. Oh! And outrage prevents analysis, which again shows you what I was saying before about that void being filled with fear because of ignorance. Then they're going to come at you with all sorts of bully tactics. You're just going to go, aren't you? And you're always going to want to give up. Because by nature, most people are lazy. They don't want to study. They want to play the game. They want to carry on doing that, watching telly, reading a book. Anything but what they need to be doing. Anyway. Right, now, this is the addition, and it's important. So let us look at how legal fictions connect to presumptions. Because this is the battlefield, okay? We know, do we not, that coming from their standpoints is all based on presumptions. And all those presumptions are based around this legal fiction, this legal person. Right, listen carefully. A legal fiction becomes dangerous when it combines with presumption. Because presumption is the bridge between allegation and enforcement. So presumption is an allegation. And if you don't grasp this difference, so not being man anymore, but between the natural person and this presumptive legal person, then the allegation holds true and enforcement ensues. I'll give you that again. A legal fiction becomes dangerous when it combines with presumption. Because presumption is the bridge between allegation, which is what it actually is, and enforcement of that allegation. As if they're administrating the legal fiction. Okay? Now, presumption allows the system to move forward unless challenged correctly. And of course, as I'm saying, man, it was an incorrect challenge. It's correct in reality. We are man. But in the system that we're in, because we're responding, It's incorrectly challenged because we're using the wrong words. We're nearly there. We've nearly got it. We're always nearly just fucking there. You get my drift? And I'm guilty. Guilty as charged, you gang. I'm a reformed natural person. Anyway. Right. Presumption allows the system to move forward unless unchallenged correctly. Challenged correctly. And this is where many people fail. They argue the wrong thing. They argue, I'm not a fiction. I am real. This is contemptible. Now, it's true. But it's not the way to argue in this this system of form, not substance. Okay? It's substance, natural man, natural person. That's substance, upon which is based this form. Yeah? So your rights are not coming from the form, they're coming from the substance. Right. Presumption allows the system to move forward unless challenged correctly. And this is where many people fail. They argue the wrong thing. They argue, I am not a fiction. I am real. This is contemptible. No. Which is what we all fucking do. The system is not asking you if you are metaphysically real. What's be the point? You can't deal with that. It is asking you if you are within these statutory classifications for this purpose. So are you coming in, are you a natural person, or are you coming in as this legal person? And when we say no, we're man, we're not giving them the correct argument. They can only then carry on with the presumption because it's not been rebutted. It has, but not in the form that they are looking to administer, because that's all they've got. Okay? So we go, you bastards, but really, they'd be stupid if they did it, because they've been operating contrary to their procedure. They wouldn't be affording you the right, because you've not claimed them. Now, you know, this is difficult for me to present to you because this is what I've been putting out like everybody else. But it's always better to learn later than never. We're learning. The system is not, right, the system is not asking if you're metaphysically real. It's asking if you are within these statutory classifications for this purpose, whatever the purpose is of that particular matter. So the correct posture is to identify the classification asserted. What classification are you asserting yourself as? We go, man, under God, blah, blah. And back in the day, that worked. 1688? No. Different gig. Right? Who took you off God in 1688? The Whigs, the Solomons. Put you under these fruit bats from Sumer. Okay? Nicked it and put it into statutes that they control as a government. Cromwell created the Commonwealth of Governments, remember? People forget this shit. Well, it's not that they forget it, they just don't connect the dots with it. That's why we're all nothing to fill the void apart from nonsense. Now, so the correct posture is to identify the classification that you're asserting, or get them to identify the classification of their presumption. Identify the definition that captures you, right? So in that sense, you want to say, well, what is it that's captured me in this matter that I have to come and talk, right? Identify the nexus that allegedly attaches jurisdiction and rebut it with precision. Okay, so let's look at it like this. In fact, we'll carry on reading it, and then maybe we'll have a look at it. Now, let us look at why angst becomes problematic for us. So that's ignorance. Ignorance is what gives us that. I mean, I don't put my head under covers, but most people do. And it doesn't serve you. Now, this is the hard truth. If someone cannot move beyond a fence, they become strategically useless to themselves. Because emotions keep them stuck at the surface. So this is back to what I was saying at the beginning. They keep fighting the idea of fiction rather than the attachment of fiction. You are therefore fighting the narrative when the court is acting by procedure. The system does not respond to indignation. So, I'm fucking disgusted, you are... Indignation. What does the court do? Contempt of this court. Put him in prison, the little shag face. Yeah, so do it again. If someone cannot move beyond a fence, they become strategically useless to themselves because emotions keep them stuck at the surface. So, back to what I was saying before. The less data, knowledge, methodology you have in reacting to something that stimulates fear and energy that makes you act, you are screwed because the only thing filling that void is fear. Now, if we have data and think that it's right, okay, then when it's not working, we become strategically useless to ourselves because we're on an emotion that we're right. And so we are stuck at the surface of it. And therefore we're offended. So can you see? So you've got empty void filled with fear. You've got a strategic methodology that's limited. Then you're on a fence. Yeah? You're on indignation. Again, the system won't respond to it. Or it will, but it'll just do it, throw it at you, or even get you for contempt. And still, they're following their system correctly. Right? Does it hurt that? Right. Now, enforcement in legal venues and how fiction becomes real in effect is what is important to consider. I'll do that again. Enforcement in legal venues and how fiction becomes real in effect is what is important to consider. Let us talk about enforcement. Courts and agencies enforce outcomes based on what the form accepts as operative. That means a fiction does not need to be true in nature. It needs to be accepted in procedure. Once the form accepts you are a respondent or a taxpayer, a licensee, or an employer, you are within this regulated class. Then the system can issue effects such as orders, judgments, liens, penalties, forfeitures, restrictions, and compliance mechanisms. To you, it feels as if they've turned a fiction into reality. Now that's quite a bit to take in, right? But when I went to court last for myself, and the clerk refused to take the long form, because that's the credit, and the judge tried everything. So, well, have you got a bank account? No, but the trust has. Well, have you got a driving license? I said, no, but the trust has. And he were fucked. He were fucked. Because I separated myself from the evidenced equity. Shown, long form, no surname. Not the short form. So I came in with the equity. In truth, the prosecutor had both the debt and now the credit. They should have been fucked, but I didn't know that back then. That's what that's saying. So all these questions, they're trying to attach the legal title to the natural person that you've come in as, but you haven't. You've come in as a fucking man. What else can they do but presume, because they can only act with that legal person and for the natural person. That's the kicker. This is the sort of shift that I've come to realise in this last month. Okay? And it's profound, ladies and gentlemen. Profound. Okay? In comprehension. The correct understanding is this. They used procedure to produce enforceable outcomes. Give you that again. They used procedure to produce enforceable outcomes. And what's that procedure? Well, it's based entirely on what you coming in as. So when we come in as man, they can't see that. All they can see is natural person and legal person. We haven't come forward as natural person. They can only see legal person. Back in the old days, when the judges were still based in English law, if they could see you were nearly there, you know, that's got more and more difficult as the older judges have retired and we've got these soulless folks in there. But then, even saying that, they're still operating in accordance with the form. You with me? Lesson. Do not attack the existence of fiction. Attack the attachment of that fiction to you, the natural person. Right? So it's an attachment of one thing over another. It's not denying the other, it's attaching it to the other. Such as, ask the question, where did it attach? By what definition? Through what conduct or nexus and under what jurisdiction was the presumption properly raised? Was the burden shifted? Was it rebutted? This becomes beneficial to us and problematic to the system. You do not scream, you dissect. This is and the other is always answer a question with a question, because they're asking you for questions to answer to give them administration rights. You've got to ask the right questions that show them that they don't have that authority to attach. The mind shift. Let us stop reacting as if the legal fiction is an insult to us and begin treating it like it is what it is. A legal mechanism used to classify and administer. Your natural reality is not on trial. The attachment is on trial. If we can separate who we are from what the form is treating us for a limited purpose, we can finally stop becoming trapped in anger and begin to operate in strategy. This is how we move from outrage to leverage. The expectations of honest cooperation between the people. Now, so, okay, do you get that? So I'll give you that again. Your natural reality is not on trial. The attachment or legal person, the gateway or the doorway to the estate is. If we can separate who we are from what the form is treating us for a limited purpose, we can finally stop becoming trapped in anger and begin to operate in strategy. This is how we move from outrage to leverage. Now, I've said it before. We were almost there, but we're going a jurisdiction beyond its reach, and that is the sovereign rights afforded to us by the Father of the Beginnings. When this system now, because the old common law is way gone, and it's only what they've moved into government statutes from 1688 or 1649 even, is where we've just got it slightly off kilter, but enough to cause fucking chaos. You with me? Now, let's look at what should be going on, because it isn't right what they're doing. It's not correct because they're shifting the goalposts and they're not playing fair, but that's dictatorship, unfortunately. That's the way dictatorship works. When you've got an ignorant populace, they can do what the fuck they want, basically. And they're doing it now. What you've studied of Germany pre-World War II is exactly what we're in. We're in that time. Now, your natural reality is not on... I've done that, sorry. So this is basically how we need to look at what's going on. Because they're not in honour. Far from it. They're not in honour because they're acting like little corporate groups creating their own decisions for their own outcomes, which was evidenced last year in the March hearing at Preston, when settlement was refused because they didn't want separate settlement, which is what procedure demands. No, they wanted bankruptcy because the council are collecting heritage properties in each town and they wanted that property. So they fucked procedure, hoping full well we'd never notice it, because they had an outcome that they needed, which couldn't be gained from settlement. What they wanted was bankruptcy, and in order to do that, they had to rule insolvency. Yet, settlement had been offered. Okay, so that's them not following their own procedure. Yep, that's dishonouring the crown. Okay, that's what that is. It's important stuff. Now, this is how it should be. So the expectations of honest cooperation between the people and the state has to be balanced with the honest cooperation between the state and the people. So, meaning, if justice and a balanced field is to be had, both you and the state have to be operating with each other from a standpoint of honest, honourable cooperation. Okay? Otherwise, there is never going to be justice. It isn't a level playing field. Okay? It's not tennis. Only from this standing can justice be served. What did Queenie say? I cannot give you justice! Because, see, I'm going to fuck you all over the show. And you are so stupid. You are not listening to what I'm saying. And you think I'm amazing. And you're going to love me until you die. And meanwhile, I am fucking the shit out of your system. And every single country attached to the Commonwealth. But next week, with the squeaky voice, you're all going to suck it up. And that worked a fucking treat, didn't it? Right. Next. The problem faced by all today is the standing of the state. Now, it's also our own standing. As we've explained, we're coming in just slightly wrong. We've recognised there's a difference. We know we're real. Because we walk about, shout a lot, poo and pee. We know we do this. We just, man is the wrong term because we're no longer before or pre-1688. Alright? So the problem we're facing today, if you're coming in honourable, let's just say, is the standing that the state is taking. Alright? This is tyranny. This is what Socrates told us all about way back in the day. About what the fuck democracy is, which is why we were never a democracy, we were a constitutional monarchy. But I cannot give you justice, because they weren't a constitutional monarchy anymore. For the state to be legitimate, its presumptions must be legitimate. Okay? Get on board. if honest cooperation is to be the foundation of the court, then no question asked relating to the lawful authority of a presumption. So back to what we said before. How, by what, yeah, is it attachment accepted or given? Yeah, so any question relating to lawful authority that they're claiming for this attachment, which is the authority of the presumption, which is what it is, can be ignored, obfuscated, or denied. If it is so, then the presumptions are not legitimate. The court is not legitimate. The officers are not legitimate. They're all dishonouring the crown. Neither of them are following procedure. Your rights are being obliterated. So as we move further down the ignorance trap, they've moved this game up now. You've got the Fraud Error Recovery Bill, and now they're really battering down because we're getting that little tiny bit mixed up. Today, what the state operates as cooperation, in its own little mind, has become a submission to demands. So in their eyes, cooperation means you do what the fuck you're told, get on your belly, bend over, and let them have their way with your bottom. So it's what they claim today as cooperation is actually submission to demands that the people do not understand. And that's why they can do it, because they know you don't understand. They know fear's going to fill that void. And now even to the point they're quite concerned the remainers of us have still got that little bit wrong. So although we've got methodology and intellect in the game, we're still missing that vital shift. They can railroad, like they've just done with quite a few compadres of mine who I've been helping. We've done the same format that we've done before. Bang, a different kettle of fish altogether. They are operating like the dictators that you would know. Now, the submission is demanded to an authority that has never been proven. And we haven't called it down to be proven either. We're saying prove your authority over man. And we know that they haven't and they can't, because they can't. There is no evidence that that attachment is a right of theirs. It's a presumption. The people are submitting to a jurisdiction that has never been established. It's a presumption. It's not established on a level playing field. Both parties are not in full capacity to what the fucking hell jurisdiction they're in. Yeah, so they submit to a jurisdiction that it's not been established in agreement by all parties, which is the assumption we go in, that we're going to get justice. No. I cannot give you justice, but I'll give you my heart. What does that mean? Says I. In this mechanic, presumption becomes power. Does it not? Unbridled fucking power. And then what's the enforcement on the back of that? Jackboot. Because in their eyes, you are a fucking monster. You are a useless eater. You are a guy. But they might have a use for you for a bit, because of your belief system. You're still a guy. Therefore, when government authority expands through presumption rather than proof, then cooperation is no longer a virtue. It is a demand. It becomes the mechanism to our own subordination. You insubordinate boy! I heard that quite a lot when I was at school. In this circumstance, the Constitution and the application of intellect to full confrontation becomes necessary. It's the only fucking way. So if you're citing Magna Carta, you'd be citing it as natural person. Okay? Not violent confrontation, which is why you've got lawful rebellion in the Magna Carta. We just don't understand it right. But a full fact-based confrontation with the state. So when we get to this point, your only fucking way forward is to go against it in full intellectual and applicated law to confront it. And this we must do en masse. And this means educate yourself, get some balls, fill that void that becomes enveloped with fear because we don't have this mechanic in our minds to operate. We freeze. And then all of us that have got this, we're limited. Oh, we've got it. So it's limited. We go, you are not doing your job right. We're going to kick your ass. Bah, 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 bah. Indignation. Ooh. Now, I hope this is making real sense to you all because it is so imperative that this is understood. Especially if you're doing anything in relation to rebutting these claims from this Johnny-come-lately system of attachment of legal title to your equitable title. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Because I'll tell you what, not only does it make sense, but it's been working a treat in this AI for this last month. So what I've encapsulated in quite a bit of study in this time, and it's been quite intense, there it is in the simplest form I can pull together. And it's like anything with the universe. You seek and ye shall find. Because in seeking this new shift, new characters have come into my fray for me to focus and to better understand and comprehend this issue that we've been having, all of us. And we've all been having this issue, have we not? So I'm not going to do anything else because I don't want to take away from this data, because this is, of course, I'll put the document up after. I've put the two together, but the common law is just there if you want to reference, but it's that added data on the legal fiction that is so important to all of us if we want to move forward with this dementia because of what they're doing in the bigger arena in La La Land. So let's have a look who else has been in and what you've been saying. And then, okay, I think I read that, yeah. Where did we get to? Stands up because it's afforded all the rights all persons have under law legal. I've read that one. You need to live it and know it. Yep. Over design with social engineering says, imagine that. Yes. The whole. Oh, I've done that one. Don't spell check me, she says, or he says. Waiting for the next false flag. Yep. Human in its true sense is unable to inherit. Yep. I've done that one. Okay, I think we're here. So, a human person is a monster or corporation. Well, it's actually classed in Ballantyne's as a sea monster. It's a shade of man, isn't it? A hue, man. And then, according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, when they find out that there's one in the belly, well, they knew you before you were born, and they class you as a human, and you are therefore afforded all the rights of person. Quick, get these titles going, these registrations. That's what that means. Because to afford you all the rights of person, this is where they get the right to do all this paperwork. Stab your little flea bag with vitamin K. Duty occur on the health. Yeah, sticking with these shots, guys. I'll give them 20,000. They're all right. Oh, they don't need that half third of that blood in that placenta. We'll just cut the cord and get rid of it now. Our blood drinkers out back will have it for breakfast. Rights of person, but they've attached that because Master there is still a shit piss. Google has no idea. And obviously the per that rents hasn't got a clue from their ass from their elbow because they got that same shit shoved down the neck. Their parents got that shit shoved down the neck because they're in a war that changed everything. They were just all glad to like thank fuck for that. Let's do gardening and grow food. It's a deconstruction of civilization. Yep. Jerry says, is there also the thing of no latches can be placed upon man? Well, like I said, pre-1642 Civil War, man existed in legislative power. Not after 1688 it didn't. Cromwell created the governments, the Commonwealth of Government, because East India would took everything over. The colonisers, the Johnny-come-latelys. 1688 in came William, and Mary cemented and formed this illegal attachment. But because they were using and pulling in common law stuff into statutory realm, here came natural person, as opposed to natural person for the hoity-toity. So they could keep breeding the bastard lines, fill the commander roles in all your militaries, so they could slaughter the shit out in World War One. World War Two were just a bit of a fantasy, really. It were mainly Russians and Germans, and a lot of Americans. But this one's not a good one. This one's for all white honkies. And blacks, because you listen to these rabbis, they're telling you there'll be no blacks in the New World Order. There'll be no whites in the New World Order. There'll be no Muslims in the New World Order. There'll only be them. And there's not that many in this world that think with that mental illness. Well, actually, there probably is. That's why it's so powerful. Oh dear heck. Ulrich says, civilization. I keep hearing about a social contract being used. What the fuck is that? Oh, God. Honestly, there's so many fruit bats out there. And so many fruit bats that follow it. I think it's because what they offer is ease. Easy shit. Rather than, I don't have to do fuck all. I just have to believe these motherfuckers send the money and I'm going to be saved. A bit like these dipsticks that go, well, I'm going to be... What do they call it? What do they call it, these religious dipsticks? When they're all going to be taken off in spaceships. What did they call that? I nearly said it then. What did they call it? What did they call it? These fruit bats going about this. Oh, we're all going to be taken. Oh. It's that kind of shit, you know. It just suck it up. Well, I'm a good person because I am, and I'm going. What did they call it? That word that they all use for. I can't remember. Any reference to person is a corporation, even a natural person or individual are legal terms. So is human. All Black's Law Dictionary defined it as see definition of monster. Yes, but did you get the drift of what I'm saying? Natural person is the referencing the equity in the estate. It's the legal person that's the gateway into accessing that. You really need to just give it a little bit more consideration. Or apply your version into AI and then apply my version into AI and watch the difference in the response to get a full understanding of what I'm saying. You can't go in as a flesh and blood man. It's no longer in law. It was when we were all under the Heavenly Father in the common law. No, personage is the game, but there's natural person and legal person. A social contract is the invisible contract created by a minimum contact. You use their system, it's contract enough or an ever encroaching. The social contract is the acceptance of the attachment of the legal person. So you're not going to be administered in rights of equity, you're going to be administered in liabilities. They're their liabilities, not yours. They've come forward with the debt. It's their liability until they can attach it to you, your equity. Just give it a thought, chat. Give it a chance. You know, like, you're holding on there, real to surreal. You're holding on there. Just like we've all done. Forever. Just try and let go of that, because it's old gig. And just apply. Play it with AI, by all means, to see yourself the difference you get from it. Because that's fixed now into statutes completely. Give it a shot. If you don't buy it, that's fine, kid. You don't have to buy it. I'm not a dictator. So quite son Jerry, you're quite right. Is it freedom? Well, it's freedom from the liabilities that they're coming forward with, yes. Isn't that the problem? In all points on this stuff. Right, whoever just sent me that text, kiss my fucking ass. No, not you, Ian. No, that were you. Sorry, mate, not you. This is what this other guy chatted with present with himself in court. He also said something about an object. I'll have it in some notes somewhere. This guy apparently fought his mortgage on one, but took it 10 years. Well, I think this is the thing. It's just so fucking... I mean, I've spent a month on this, ladies and gentlemen, and I have to say, it's just changed the way AI plays and the data that AI brings back. So, we'll see. Because I'm formulating this now for a judicial review. So, let's wait and see. Okay, but just consider this. They've changed everything now in these courts. The whole system is working completely different than it has done. They are buckling down big time to the great taking. Remember that. That's what this is all about. Treen says, so can you at some point give us a free example of how using the private and natural person would work? Maybe in the future episodes. I will do, Tree. Well, I think what we might have to do is I'm going to have to get my little chick-knack together and we're going to have to continue our private Zoom situation. So, I have a few things to just deal with at the moment on this judicial review thing. And the first, I've already started the pathway back to get into a point where we can do these Zooms. So, that's what I think. We'll keep it to that. Because you never know who's listening to these live streams. And I don't want the wrong kind of people, you know, being able to do stupid things and get away with it, to be honest. So I think that's what we'll do, Train. I have started. Just a few more points to pull together. Because you know what it is? It's time. There's money involved in this particular setup for me to do it. So it's everything in its order. And I think that's how we're going to continue. So it'll be back to all those that were at the conference and those that were invited to the Zoom that we did. We'll continue that format. And of course, once I set it up, we can basically do as many of these Zooms as we want. There's no time frame to it and nothing. And I think it'll roll along pretty quickly. And then, of course, we've got the efforts of Darren that we can consider if people choose to go down that route as well. So thanks for trying, because now I've said it, and there we go. Natural person has been used before, some time back, the same thoughts on it then. Yeah, absolutely. But it were always the case, it's person food. I never actually tried it. You know? I mean, but then I have had success with the way I've worked. And so what I'm saying is they've now shifted. They've buckled down further on this attachment. And until we come right, they're not even accepting. Well, he gets it. He knows what he's doing. He's obviously not stupid. It's gone. That's gone now. It's becoming absolute fucking strict. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, in or out. You're off. You're in. And this is exactly what we've just experienced since Christmas with a couple of people that have been doing what we do, done it very well, to naught. In fact, rather severe response in one case. Quite disgusting, really. I'm not sure to what extent they used it. Jerry, okay, Jerry, thanks for that. Rapture, that's the flaming one. Yeah. Rapture. We're going to be ruptured. I think ruptured is probably the correct term, but raptured, if that's how they want to see it. Is the Monopoly piece on the board you use to move around the board? Yes, it certainly is. Well said there, Jerry. And Charming Anarchist says social contract equals FAFO. Can you define FAFO, please? Charming Anarchist. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to put together tonight. It's pretty clear that they're going hell for leather now on this Iran thing, because that pulls into form everything they want for this future ship show, for the great taking of the WEF and all its fruit bats, to activate all the religious nonsense that's out there waiting in the wings to carry out the thing. I've seen fucking 2 Sharia guys on horses in Manchester. Listen, guys, with horses, just get a big fucking break and hit the fucking horse, throw it at the horse, right at head. That guy, whoever's on it, won't be on it for 2 fucking minutes. And telling you now, if they're going to start playing that, that's what you do. It's horse's fucking fault for having them twats on their fucking back. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, if they're going to start playing that, guys, they'll write to the wicked man. They'll write to get rid of the wicked man. And the castle doctrine, it's very clear there. There is no law says you have to run in, run away, give warning, and lethal force is acceptable. It's not acceptable to the policy enforcers because it takes their game off. It's a duty under service of law, 9 principles of law, that your job is to service the fucking law. It's that simple. Alright? So regardless of... You know when they all say, you can't take the law into your own hands. It's exactly what we're fucking meant to do, because that's what it fucking says. And with that diatribe, ladies and gentlemen, I would bid you a fair week. Put some effort in to get into the grits with this, and the Zoom meetings are coming back quicker than you think, because now that I've started to make this shift, I can really see now how those Zooms are going to be exceptionally valuable, not just to people as individuals, but to us all as we expand group form, in order we confront this system with intellect and proper rebuttal. Thank you for joining me, mods. Thank you very much for modding. And as always, I will say, till the next time.
electronic